So can you put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Lewi Software.
Trust. Trust has been on a lot of people's lips lately, and it seems to be a bit of a hot topic. I was at a conference recently about AI, and the first panel session, I'm sure they spoke about trust at least 10 times, if not more. There's a lot of interest around trust, and I'm also a founding member of the Trust Alliance at QUT, which is where I did my research. And the Trust Alliance is all about understanding the science of trust. So some of what I'm doing today is sharing some of that knowledge, because it is a really important thing. We all sort of crave trust. We all want trust. We desire it. And the reason why is fairly obvious, I guess, simple, is because it helps us feel safe. And when we feel safe, we're going to be then more likely to want to experiment and to try something new. And which is very important for Agile people. You guys are always doing something new, you're always pushing the boundaries like I have been as an engineer. So I have been working as an engineer for over 30 years. I work in the water industry. And about 10 years ago, I became a bit curious about innovation, and well, over 10 years ago, actually, became curious about innovation and why it wasn't working, why it was so hard. So I went back to QUT to do another degree. Ended up being a master's degree. Did start as a PhD, but didn't quite finish for lots of reasons. But anyway, I learned a lot through that whole research, which is what the foundation of today is all about, and the foundation of the Innovate Wisely company and the InnoWise framework that I've developed. So I will be sharing with you some of that research, and then I'll be showing you how it's been applied to a couple of case studies. One is for a software company called Lewi Software, who have utilised the framework to help them with their implementation program. The other is with a council, and they're utilising the framework to help them with the engagement of the community and the teams, stakeholders, to help them with a large capital improvement program. So I will conclude, I guess, with what I believe is the alignment between what I'm presenting, like the Innovate Wisely framework, and how people do things in Agile. But you guys are more, some of you people are more expert in Agile than I am, and Agile specialist, so I'll be looking for your feedback and input into what my perception is. But one of the key principles, I suppose, is that Agile is founded upon collaboration, and to have that collaboration to occur successfully, you need trust. And you need trust in your team, in your stakeholders, in your management, but they also need to trust you. But it goes beyond that. It's not just people, actually. There are other things that you need to have trust in, such as the trust of the problem that you're solving, you're spending time on to try and solve. The trust in the solution that's being put forward to solve that problem. It could be trust in the knowledge that's being provided or created. All of those things can cause barriers or stall how the energy behind the change that's going on, which I'll show you. So this is the academic model that came out of the research from QUT, and there's a QR code there for the paper if you're interested in accessing it. So the model on the left side aligns the knowledge processes with the innovative outcomes on the right side. And I guess for the first time with the research, it showed how knowledge aligns with innovation. And it's obvious when you think about it, to have innovation you need knowledge, but to have new knowledge you need to have innovation to occur. But along the way, things get in the way, and what I found from the research, the key things that seem to get in the way is trust. And when you don't have trust, you won't have the momentum, so they are also linked. they influence the flow of knowledge to the innovation outcomes. So there's a lot of detail in there which I won't go into, but I've translated this framework into something a little bit more useful. And it's a 4-step process. So it starts off with what I call the form phase, which is all about that initiation stage where you're starting off and you're forming an understanding that there is a problem. You're starting to form the solution and in your mind. You're starting to form the team. You're starting to form the new knowledge that's going to be required to create the solution. Then the second step is create and test, which is when you're starting to apply that new knowledge that's being created and testing it. One of the key aspects of, or differences with this framework is that it really, at each stage, it points to what are the knowledge aspects that are occurring, not just the innovative aspects that are occurring. So in the create phase, we focus on not just about creating and testing the solution, but also creating and testing the knowledge artifacts that your customers or your users will need to be able to use the solution. So then the second stage is the adopt phase, which is where you're implementing, but you're also, that's where you're really transferring the knowledge to your customers and the users of the solution. Then the final stage is the critique. And I call it critique because it's more than just doing a feedback session or a review session. It's really trying to hone in on what is the new knowledge that's being created and what other opportunities are there within the organisation or within the customer base to utilise that new knowledge. Rather than pointing fingers and trying to find I guess reasons why things have gone wrong, look for the opportunities, look for the new knowledge that's being created. But at the heart of the framework is the trust and energy principles. So, and they affect every stage. So if you don't have that trust that you are working on the right problem, that you have the right solution, that you have the right team, the collaborators, you've got enough resources, you won't have the energy to get through the problems you're going to face. And it's a continuous improvement process as well, which is why it's presented as a circle and it's all connected. And as the former chief entrepreneur Julia Spicer said at one of the conferences I went to, innovation moves at the speed of trust. So it's well felt and well understood that those principles are connected. It's all well and good to know these things, but another saying goes, you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So what I went about doing was trying to figure out, okay, it's great to know that trust influences all these things, and energy has a huge impact on momentum and enthusiasm, but how do we measure it? So I came up with some tools to help with that. And the tools help us with planning and measuring and then improving. So it's a 360-degree process, or continuous improvement process. The planning is done with what I call the knowledge canvas. So it's a step-by-step process that takes you through all of those 4 steps of the InnoWise process, and make sure you think about the knowledge aspects at each stage, and think about the trust aspects and the momentum aspects, and helps you plan for that right from the beginning. But it's something you can just keep live and dynamic and share with the team as a communication tool, because it's a very succinct canvas. The trust analyzer is a tool to help measure trust, and it's based on research that I've done to come up with using research methods to develop the questions to measure trust with your stakeholders or your customers, with your team. And I've been trialling using AI to help with that process to improve the efficiency of it. So it uses thematic analysis techniques to really hone in on what are the trust blockers, what are the energy blockers going on at that time, and then you come up with a score and then a focus to help you on the next step or to understand what you need to do to improve, and then you start planning for the next phase of improvement. So this slide I did with help from Lewi Software, because he's definitely very much an expert in the Agile realm of things, and he's a Scrum Master and all that sort of stuff. So he helped me develop this. So I guess to show how the InnoWise framework fits in with Scrum, but I know Agile has a whole bunch of different things, but this is just one way of looking at it, I suppose. So with the Scrum, you have planning is a big part of it, and I guess the framework that I've developed helps guide you in that planning process and helps you document what you're going to be doing and then sharing what you're going to be doing with your stakeholders and your team. The sprint review is where you would use the trust and energy, or the trust analyzer metrics, to help you do the review and understand what should be going into the retrospective and into the next stage of planning. So the case studies. Lewi Software is a company founded from two chemical engineers. I'm a chemical engineer as well, so it's kind of how I know them. I've been helping them a little bit with the software as well, and they've been helping me with testing my framework on their project. So it's been a good mutual thing and relationship. Anyway, their software is all about doing material balances for people developing new processes, which can be applied to all sorts of things like water treatment, which is what I do, or oil and gas industry, or mining, or milk, whatever. There's a process in everything if you're manufacturing something. So that's what their software does, but they also do. It helps them. You do create the diagram, and then you do the rapid scenario testing, and then it does the techno-economics as well. So what we did with them is sort of, this is Vishnu's words, which describes how it's being utilised and why they needed someone like us. So I guess Vishnu was looking to understand better how to engage with his stakeholders, with his client. There's a new company, it's a startup, so there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty from their own knowledge and experience, but also how to bring in something new into this large company that they're dealing with. So they've utilised the tools to help them have that structure, have that clarity of what's next, and to understand how best to engage with the client, what questions to ask, when to ask. And by doing that, they can align a lot faster with the team and embed their product. And then the metrics are then utilised as a KPI to help them give feedback to the client. This is how the project is going. These are the roadblocks. This is what we're working on next. So what we ran through with them was, first of all, a process checklist to really understand where they are in that process. And it turned out they were in the adopt phase. So we have a process checklist that you can go through, and it's a very simple checklist, because sometimes a project manager will have a perception that they've finished adopt and they're about to go to the next phase of improvement, which is the critique phase, and then get ready for the next round of improvement. But if you ask your customers and your stakeholders, they may have a different opinion. So and that's what's happened with another client of mine as well. And anyway, so it's a useful check on where you're at with your project. And so we started there. Then we applied the trust analyzer to measure the trust and energy, and that was used as KPIs, as I said. and it identified some potential momentum blockers with the client, which was fairly obvious, I guess, but once you put it down on paper and you consciously think about it, it's only then that you can really address it. And it was simply about managing the client's time. Everything retrospective. Yeah, it just helps them. Okay, these are all the blockers, but this is the key one. Focus on that. Anyway, knowledge canvas then we've used to document where they're up to with the project status, and that's going to be used as a communication tool with the client as well. So next case study is with South Burnett Council. So what they wanted to do, they're doing a program to improve the water quality in the South Burnett region. So they've engaged me for my engineering expertise, but also for my InnoWise expertise, because they really wanted something that would engage, a process that would engage with the stakeholders and get them on board, which included the councillors, but also politicians that were going to have to be engaged with to get funding to do the water quality improvements in the program. But it was also to make sure it was a collegiate response, I suppose, to understanding what are the key problems that they have, which are many, and how do we focus on them, how do we prioritise them, and do that with a really good understanding of the drivers behind things. And I guess the need to make the invisible visible, like with water coming out of your tap. People don't understand really what's all behind. There's a lot of work that goes behind that water that comes out of the tap. So, and the only way to do that is with communication and engaging with your customers and your stakeholders, and letting the councillors know, the politicians know, this is what we're dealing with. The other thing they wanted then said was, we don't want another report that sits on the shelf, they want action. So we actually turned the whole thing around. They wanted, in the documents, to get the job, they wanted a report at the end of the day. But we just turned it around and we said, no, we're going to call it a strategy. It's not a report, it would be a strategy, so we don't call it a report anymore. Just things like that. And using the program we're doing is helping us really map out how we're going to engage with the community and with the politicians, and then we can measure it. And that helps you manage it, as I said. So we've conducted a workshop with the operations team and the engineering team and the councillors, and we've analysed the responses that they gave at those workshops, and as John said, it really did show the difference between what happened after we spent pretty much all day talking about technical aspects of the engineering problems and the scientific problems we're dealing with, and then at the end we focused then on the trust and energy aspects of the project, and it just turned the whole conversation around and allowed people to open up and really talk about what their problems were. And I remember very clearly one operator who's very quiet, and he basically turned to me and he had tears in his eyes and said, it's just so frustrating, and with nothing we can do. Like we turn the plant on, but there's no visibility, and if something could happen and we wouldn't know. We could kill somebody with our water supply because we just don't have enough information to stop the treatment in time. And it just worries them so badly. So it affects their energy, right? It affects their health. It affects their trust in the whole system. And anyway, that really did. It brings out those sorts of emotions, I suppose, when you start talking about these things. And the same thing in the councillor workshop. The last hour we just spent talking about what could be the roadblocks with, coming up with the money you're going to need for this huge problem that you have. And as most of you, I'm sure, would know, it's difficult for regional councils to find money to do capital programs, especially when it comes to water. I don't know why. I mean, water is so important for everybody to have healthy, safe water coming out of their tap, but it's often put down on the list. But hopefully with this kind of program, we can bring it up and really show why it needs to be done. And by focusing on that, focus on the why, focus on the drivers, and really understand what it's going to take for the politicians to give the region, the council, the money that they need. Give the support to the operators that they need to make the changes that are going to have to happen to get the water quality better, and implement the projects that are coming. And so it's going to be a 5 to 10 year program that we're developing. So it's going to require a lot of energy, a lot of focus for a long time to get across what they need to get across to improve the water quality. So, and the idea is that we do the trust and energy scores, the trust analyzer, on a regular basis, so we can keep on top of what's happening out there. Are we really dealing with those issues that are stopping momentum in implementation? Are we communicating effectively with those that really need to be communicated with? And once again, using the knowledge canvas as a tool to communicate with the councillors as well as the community. So this is just a little overlay, I suppose, of the different things of where I'm at with the software. Someone asked me before, where did the software come from? And I said, well, I'm the inventor of the software. So it's come from me. And my son is helping me he's a software engineer, thankfully. I've got a software engineer in the family, so he's been helping me with developing the software. So it's a work in progress, like a lot of software is. And there's a lot to do to improve, and I've been testing AI to help me get the analysis done more efficiently. And then it will be embedded into the platform that we've developed to do the knowledge canvas. So that's hopefully where we'll end up. So you'll have a dashboard with your trust scores, energy scores there, so you can then manage it. So it'll be a live stream basically. Once you send out the questions, then you have a live stream coming back of the answers in a form that you can utilise. So I guess in summary, the InnoWise process is a structured, science-based process, and because it's science-based, it's based on research I did at QT, following sound research methods. It's not something completely new or different. It fits into what you're already doing, but it just adds the aspect of knowledge and trust into what a standard process is. And I realise there's a typo there. Excuse me. So four-step process: form, create, adopt, and critique, which is repeatable, scalable. You can do it at any stage. You can start at the critique phase, if that's where you're up to. You don't have to start at the form phase. Ideally, that'd be great. Start at the form phase, and then you're planning for knowledge. You're planning for trust right from the beginning. But if you already started, that's fine. You just get on the bandwagon and start focusing on those things. Then and the tools which I've already mentioned. So this is how I think, I guess it aligns with Agile, but I'm keen to hear from you guys. So I believe it would help an Agile team do that collaboration early and often by getting faster alignment with your team and with your stakeholders, with your customers. And it builds that clarity quickly by asking the right questions at the right time and by documenting it in a succinct way. And by doing that, you reduce friction, because it really brings out what you need to know or hear. And sometimes it's not good, but most of the time it is good. Like the councillor, in the councillor workshop, the operators said, if you feel safer to answer more honestly, we're happy to leave the room. But they said, no, we we want you here, we trust you immensely, we love what you're doing, we support you, so it gave them an opportunity to really connect and really talk honestly about the relationship that they have. So the idea of doing these tests early and often, as you are before they become too big, or the momentum blockers become too big, and all of a sudden you've gone down this rabbit hole for a year and you've spent all the budget and no one really wants it anyway. So how many times has that happened? So the idea is that it tries to stop those sorts of things early by doing these things often. So I guess documenting as well, documenting through the critique process. So many places I've been at and worked with, being an engineer, they'll do a lessons learned at the end of the project, not as they're going, but at the end of the project. And then tick the box, we've got to do lessons learned, and we'll get in a room and these are the lessons, and we've learnt them, we've put them into a spreadsheet, see you later, and that's it. And then you get this huge database of lessons learned, but does anyone really do anything with it? So I guess the idea of critiquing early, like you do in Agile, I guess you're critiquing early, you're learning quickly, and you're moving on. I guess by having those measures of the trust metrics as well, the trust and energy metrics, and having that visibility just helps with transparency, and gets it all out on the table as well, it just helps improve and attain stronger outcomes. But anyway, I'm keen to hear from you guys. What would your project look like if trust was a metric from the start to the end? Yep.
So thank you so much. That's I think we've got lots of time for questions.
Yeah.
but before, just a few takeaways from our side. I think that I've really enjoyed the process and the tools that you described. I think the one thing that resonated with me is just looking in terms of foster alignment, that could be used maybe as part of a continuous improvement backlog refinement process. Because if you're constantly using trust to refine your backlog, then you can surface those things to say, well, are we really building stuff that's going to address those trust issues? So it's a way of sort of being able to prioritize work more effectively, I think.
And energy as well. So is there support for that
and then
at every level? Yeah.
And on the other side, when you think of guys like Eric Ries with the Lean Startup and so on, and the emphasis on continuous metrics and avoiding the vanity metrics, is that this might have a way of having some real metrics that allow you to see whether what you are implementing is actually improving the situation or not, especially when you look at these softer things like trust and so on.
Yes.
So I find that very interesting.
There are I didn't really explain too much about how it all works, but there are templated questions for each stage of the InnoWise framework that can be modified and mixed up as well. So sometimes you might be in between phases, you might be in between form and create, so you could do a bit of both. Questions, so it just makes that whole process easier.
Sure. So I'll open the floor to questions. Thompson.
Yeah, a lot of the work I'm seeing lately, there's a lot of AI coming into things. How do you find trust with AI working in projects at the moment?
Oh, well, it's a huge issue, isn't it? Trust with AI, but I guess, and I'm having the same thing with trying to develop the AI and be able to trust that it can do what I want it to do every time. It's difficult. So I guess by understanding where those trust blockers are, then you can manage them or understand how to manage them. And I guess it depends on where you're applying it and what level. Has it already been tested a lot or not, or is it a new thing? Like I'm creating this trust analyzer is a new thing. So there's going to be a lot of learning it needs to do. So I guess it depends where it is on the learning scale. You know, if it's machine learning, right, most of AI is machine learning anyway. So yeah, I'm not an expert in AI by any stretch, but it's definitely a big issue in trust.
I'm just interested in it because the company I'm dealing with at the moment, they have a couple of very big AI projects on the go that are designed for the end user to do things like ask, oh, how did my budget go last month? That kind of thing. And I'm fascinated by this relationship between the end user and a non-human entity that they have to deal with. Instead of being able to pick up the phone or send an email, they've now got this thing that isn't going to give them an explanation. It's just going to say, here's your answer. Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people are learning, I guess, to use AI as their friend, aren't they? So I think they're useful for gaining efficiencies and things. So it just depends on what it is you're doing with it, isn't it?
I think that's a really good example of where AI can't replace human beings, frankly. And having worked with Lee in the South Burnett project, the operator workshop, and Lee's framework just drew this out because of the questioning, and it just brought people together. And I think, from my involvement with Lee, which has been a great pleasure working on these projects with Lee, has been to see that process in play, that you're putting the people back into the project.
And it's so critical to address those trust issues. I like that quote you started off with, saying that innovation moves at the speed of trust, because it's so the one that I've had experience of is to say that the amount of documentation is directly proportional or inversely proportional to the amount of trust there is.
Very true, yeah.
So when they don't trust you, then you've got to produce these thick volumes of, but when you have a lot of trust, then you can just do one little sentence and that's fine.
Yeah, well, that's why one of the reasons I came with the knowledge canvas, because people create all these great big reports and no one reads, like project management plans. Who reads the project management plan that was created? Not many people. Okay, one. You might read it once and then it doesn't get updated, and it doesn't get reviewed for maybe till the end of the project, maybe.
And that's why it's good to have your continuous testing part, because you can see very quickly whether something that you produce, a report or whatever it is going to be used, and if it is, you can start extending that. But if it's not, then you can move on to something else. So I have a question: what's your roadmap for the future? How are you going to be extending the model in the next few years?
For Innovate Wisely, yeah. Well, like I kind of point to, I suppose, is to keep working on the trust analyzer, and I need more test cases, I guess, to really test the AI app that I'm creating, and get some more projects on board so I can fund a software engineer rather than trying to get my son to do it. So then I can bring the knowledge canvas and the trust analyzer into the one platform and do those things that I said and make it live and dynamic for the end user. At the moment, it's all there, but it just takes a bit longer. It's not exactly dynamic, but it just takes, it's a minimal viable product, and it's all there. So the idea is that it'll take me out of the equation, and the idea is that I easily train people how to use the software and through the process, but because it's familiar, it's not hard to get your head around, and there's more. I can spend a whole hour just talking about the InnoWise process, but I didn't really want to spend too much time on that because it wasn't really the right forum for that, I guess. But anyway, so training people to use the software and in their own companies and use it on their own projects, and then they can bring us in when they need facilitation at workshops like we'll be doing, or when they have problems, whatever. So I guess that's where I'd like to go, is have the platform happening and people can subscribe to it, or whatever comes.
Further questions? Natalia?
Yeah.
I have a question. So I see how this could be utilized in the lessons learned at the end of the project, for example, or during the retrospective of the teams. Are you trying to apply this in this kind of situation to measure what level of trust the teams has to each other, and then to see the trends? Did you try these kind of things?
Yes, so the Trust Analyzer has specific questions for each phase of the InnoWise process, and at the critique phase they're obviously specific to the critique phase. So, and they're all based on measuring trust and energy at that time. So it's definitely about understanding the trust and energy the team has at that time, at the critique phase, but also trying to delve into the knowledge aspects. It's not just about trust and energy, it's really understanding the link between knowledge and innovation, and trust and energy gets in.
Yeah,
is what
I'm
gets
just
in
thinking
there.
about the wider application of this kind of idea of trust
Yeah.
analyzer. And I think it would be very nice if you can elaborate like a toolkit or like a plugin for Jira or Confluence that you integrate in the tool. And at the end of each sprint, the people can measure, can integrate that and can measure their level of trust.
Yes.
I think that could be a very good case study for you to think about how to integrate that in already existing systems.
Yeah, well, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've seen some Scrum teams, what they do at the beginning of each stand-up is that they'll do a team tip. So it's a little thermometer, and people put in how they're feeling today. So they say, am I a 5 today, or am I a 2 or a 9? And then you get a sense, because you get trending over time. You say, hang on, so everyone's low energy today, and then it gives you some data to work with.
Yeah, well, it aligns with that, absolutely, but it gives you a bit more insight than just a number. So it analyses the words that are given back, and if it's done in a workshop and people are okay, then we'll do record the dialogue that goes on, and we analyse those words as well as the written down answers. And then
and here AI, I think, can help you to analyze the answer. So maybe to address the questions, I have seen some AI agents that can address the questions to the people and get the answers for you. So you can do like a interactive interview with a virtual AI agent.
Yes.
So there is, from my point of view, there is a big potential of innovation here.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Nick, you had a question?
Yeah. If we define trust as the name of a relationship between two parties, entities, humans or machine, AI, there are some parts of it that are easy to measure, like reliability, credibility. But trust depends a lot more on the other components, which are more emotional, and even the self-orientation of the person that is in there. Are they being selfish? Are they focused on themselves? So I'm curious, in your working with it, like what practices, besides the measuring, what practices have you seen to help with bringing probably the accuracy of that analyzer trusting, as well as helping the people to shift in that level of trust, because you need change. If you're measuring something, the intention is not just to measure, but to bring about and improve that trust.
I guess, like the motto says, if you measure it, you manage it, and I guess by asking the questions at the right time and frequently, that information or those feelings, those thoughts are coming out onto the table. It can be done by email or by interview, so it doesn't have to be in a workshop situation. So the idea is, if people aren't comfortable in a workshop, then they can do it in their own time, and it can be then all the answers come in and are analysed anonymously then. So hopefully get honest answers coming in. And I guess the questions are not really asking about finger pointing. They're trying to take the ego out of the equation, and trying to take the finger pointing thing out of the equation. But it's also not just about people, it's about understanding the trust they have with the tech, which could be AI. But also just starting even back further with the problem. Do you trust that this problem is actually worth the time that you're going to put in to this project to develop this solution and test the solution and adopt this solution, depending on who it is you're asking. So it's asking all of those sorts of things. So not just about the people. Do I have enough resources to help me through this whole program that we're trying to implement here? It asks all sorts of different things.
Yeah, just to add to the question that Lisa asked, I'm not sure whether you quantify or qualify the trust, but if you do like quantification, like is it possible to actually do like these aspects of the project that the team has or the stakeholders has this amount of trust, but on the other aspects of the project,
yes,
this is the trust, and then
yes,
can that inspire like how the future of the project is like?
yeah. I guess this little diagram here shows the trust categories we looked at. We looked at knowledge objects, clarity and accessibility, implementation and feedback mechanisms, and gave it each a score. And then on the energy categories, we looked at stakeholder engagement, resource availability, momentum in implementation and alignment with goals. And then from that, picked out the two highest, I suppose, or the three highest. So the best performing ones were knowledge objects and clarity and accessibility and stakeholder engagement. The poor performing ones were feedback mechanisms and resource availability. So that sort of helped you say, look, we're doing really well in these things, also let's keep going to do good in that, but we need to pick up on these other things. And that's just the same pictorial, different way of looking at it, graph sort of thing. So I guess that's what we're trying to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Can I just, since you brought this up, just ask how this is prospectively measured?
Oh yeah, so the questions, as I said, are I guess scientifically developed for each phase using research methods, and they're questions on Likert type scales as well as open-ended questions. So the idea is that we get words back, and if it's in a workshop, sometimes we don't even go to the Likert scale. It's just all qualitative. And then we use the thematic analysis techniques to really understand where the energy blockers and trust blockers are, but also what's going well. What's the feedback that says that you're doing well. Just seeing. Yeah, pretty much. There are the scores for the council workshop. Yeah, those are the ones were for Lewi. Yeah.
So another question I'm curious about is what was the biggest challenge you had when developing the model in terms of what was something that you really needed to overcome and sort of as part of the journey of getting to where you are?
I guess going from the understanding I needed a way to measure it to then coming up with a measure. And but funnily enough, sitting down and after all the reading and research I've done and talking to so many people about that model, the questions came really easy. From the literature that I've read and everything, the questions for each phase came really easily, and I've tested them on many different people and cases, probably 100. So they have been tested, but they haven't changed very much, which is really interesting. They've modified and improved a little bit here and there. And it's not to say they're perfect yet, they still need more testing. But they're becoming clearer. And what I've tried to do is not make it big and onerous, because no one likes sitting there doing a 100 question survey, right? So each phase has about, I think at the most 10 questions. I think some at least. Do you remember?
Yep.
When something like that.
10 or 12, yep.
About 10 questions per phase. So, you know, and or is it 15? Some of them might be
There's
15.
some are a bit longer,
Yeah.
yeah.
'Cause,
But they can be customised too.
Yeah, they can be
Yeah.
customised. So what we've done in some workshops is separate them into 3 sets of 5, and we do the first 5 questions, and then we talk about those, and we talk about the outliers. So the results come up straight away, and but anonymously, because if people sit at the computers, it's easier when it's doing it in a virtual setting, because people have to have computers, you know. So the answers come back, and then we talk about the outliers, and then that gets the conversation going, and then do the next 5 and the next 5, and that can be done in an hour, better off in an hour and a half. So it doesn't take a huge amount of effort to get it done. Yeah. But the dialogue that happens just seems to be different to what you would expect for some reason. And I think it's because we're consciously focusing on trust and energy, and a whole bunch of other questionnaires out there about project performance or whatever don't talk about those things. You might get one question, but they don't really focus on those things. And the project management tools that they have out there that I found and looked at, they don't talk about knowledge either. They don't really focus on knowledge aspects and what does it take to actually create new knowledge and then manage that new knowledge and transfer that new knowledge. It doesn't talk about those sorts of things, and only there's been a lot of survey data into knowledge management, and that's less than 20% of organisations manage knowledge above an ad hoc level. So, and knowledge is a huge asset, as you could imagine, and there's such a huge opportunity then to improve the way we do things by focusing on knowledge. And what gets in the way of transferring the knowledge is the trust and the energy. So that's why it all links in.
I can see there's some really good analysis techniques behind this. What's the smallest group you think you could run this on?
Oh, well, 2.
You think so?
We have been doing that with Lewi, yeah. But that, to start with, it was just the 2 key people on the team. But and that was more for training, really, I guess, to show them this is where you're at, this is your perception. You need to go now to talk to your customer and get their perception, because you can't just rely on 2, right? You can't rely on your perception, you have to ask your customer. And that's sometimes scary, and sometimes you don't know what to ask, but that's what this does, it breaks that down. Here's your questions, off you go, I can do it for you if you want. There you go. Hello.
I want to ask if you had maybe some situation of pushback from people, they don't want to answer that question, so pushback of the feedback that the tool gives. So did you have this kind of, I don't know, frustrations, conflictual situation in the workshop?
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem I have with talking to corporates and CEOs is that, yeah, it's great, I know we know there's a trust issue, but we don't really want to face it, we don't want to deal with it, we don't really want to know. So thanks, but no thanks. I do get that, yeah.
A question. On your trust scores and energy score, you have different categories. Are they weighted or are they equal? Are they equally weighted or are they differently weighted?
There's no weighting.
There's no weighting.
No, there's no weighting.
So they're all equal.
Yeah, all equal. Yeah.
Is all of the trust expressed trust, or are you uncovering trust that these surveyors don't know they haven't got?
It's uncovering what they don't really understand about trust, definitely. Yeah. And it gets them to focus on it, which they haven't done before. Like the classic example of the counsellors, the operators thought the counsellors didn't trust them, but they inherently did trust them. Their trust score for the operators would have been 10 out of 10, hands down. We trust you guys. We know you know what you're doing.
And does your tool have a heat map of an organisation where you can see certain parts of the organisation might have a different posture to other parts?
Yeah, totally, yeah. And your customers as well, right? Their perception. Who's asking the customers? I know there's a Trustpilot thing out there, and there's Google stars and whatnot. It gives you a bit of an idea of where the trust is with that product, but it doesn't give you the insight.
As I understand, the tool is more like measuring the pulse of the organization. It doesn't give any solutions, right? So the management or whatever group need to decide what to do with that scores themselves.
So sorry, I'm having trouble understanding.
You are not giving any solution for the scores, right? They need to identify what to do with the scores themselves.
We are identifying the roadblock focus that comes up. So, I guess, we're identifying these low scores, or this one particularly, implementation, for example. And this is kind of where you need to focus and this manner of implementation. But yes, we're not necessarily coaching them on how to improve, no.
Like the tool for feedback culture badly needs to improve, so you're just showing it to them.
Yes. So someone else had a question over here.
Just from a project manager's perspective, the management of scope within trust and maybe towards the knowledge as well, but did you find that to be an important element within this project, or do you see that being a requirement or a component in the future?
Understanding the scope of the project.
Yes,
and the
an agreement as to the scope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the solution, right? So this totally talks about the solution that you're trying to implement to address the problem. Yeah, absolutely, it's part of it, yeah.
Okay. So misunderstandings in terms of that scope? I mean, I'm thinking, say, I'm not in the water industry, but that the project manager might say, or the spec might be after the pumping station, but to a council person that might mean a measurement or a recording at the roadside, in the street, which is after the pumping station, but the team might be expecting, we just walk out the door and do a recording, and it's
totally. That is one of the questions. Exactly that is to make sure we have alignment on the knowledge base of this project. One of the questions is, what is your understanding of the solution? What is your understanding of the problem? So we ask those sort of questions. Exactly that.
Thank you.
We've got time for one last question.
Okay.
Anybody with the last question? Right.
Anybody?
No. Thank you so much, Lee. It was really fascinating. We know a lot more about Innovate Wisely and about your product. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Loved it. Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
So I'm sure you'll be around for a couple more minutes in case people have got any.
Yeah, I have no idea what the time is.
So it's now 7 o'clock. So I think we'll. So Val, we can stay around for a little bit. When would it be rude for us to be? What's the rude time? Okay, so guys, there's sleeping bags underneath it.
There's lots of pizza too. Lots of wine.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And please stay to have another beer and a bit of pizza.